Thank you all. Thank you guys for coming. Thanks for braving the heat. Thanks to all my panelists. Very excited to be with this esteemed group of female leaders. As you'll see, we've all saved our voices, which is not an easy thing to do when you're in Cannes. So we made it to Wednesday. We can celebrate after this, but let's get into it. So my name is Rose McGovern, and I lead programmatic and digital sales at DIRECTV. And we're here today to talk a little bit more about commanding the C-suite, women at the forefront, and we're going to kind of delve into some different topics and hear a little bit more about these women's stories, the stories behind their personal brand, and also, you know, the brands that they lead. And we're just going to kick it off with introductions and a little icebreaker. So the icebreaker that we're going to do today is thinking about, you know, at DIRECTV, we are TV obsessed, right? And entertainment, creativity, that's a part of what's happening here at Cannes. And so I'm thinking about, is there a woman, a female lead on a TV show? Maybe a movie, doesn't really matter, but, you know, a TV show, a streaming series that really inspires you, has kind of made you think differently. I mean, listen, there's some very complex characters. I was thinking, is there something I could draw from the most recent season of White Lotus? We could spend the entire day just talking about, you know, some of the kind of character traits and flaws there. But really, is there someone who inspires you, and, you know, just share a little bit about yourself and your role?
You want me to start?
You want to kick it off, Dani?
Sure.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dani Benowitz. I am the Global Chief Negotiations Officer at IPG Mediabrands. Thank you for having me. So I was thinking about this, and I don't know that she inspired, not that she doesn't inspire me, but I think I can relate very much to Hannah Waddingham's character on Ted Lasso, Rebecca.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I thought of her too.
Right?
Yes.
Because she's kind of badass.
Yes, she is.
And she
commands.
She commands.
Yes.
But she's also really mothering and caring and empathetic to her team. Yes. And that is something that I have strove so hard to do from the minute I had a team. So I feel very relatable to her.
I love that. Yes, I had thought about that as well.
Hi, my name is Carina Ertl. I'm the CMO for Bucherer USA. We are a luxury watch retailer and fine jewelry. I was a little bit puzzled by the question. I was like, okay, I built this life in New York, maybe Carrie Bradshaw. And then I asked my team, and I gave them like 5 minutes, and they came back and they said, you know what, Mulan. Because you're wearing a suit, you work in a male-dominated industry, you're fighting for us, you have a purpose, and you're finding your femininity while you're doing it.
Like it.
Then I cried.
I know, I just got chills. I'm like, okay, that's a different level, for sure. And how about you, Susan?
It's funny, I did the exact same thing because I struggled
with
characters. So I asked my team and a couple of our advertising agencies, and the one person they came back with is, I'm not sure if anyone's watched Running Point, the new Netflix show.
I did.
Hudson.
I binged it.
So if you know the show, it's based off the owner of the LA Lakers, who's female. I'd love to say that I dress like her, but I don't. But she does, you know, do things in a great way in terms of she's commanding, but she does it in a way in terms of her authority and doing it in a way that exemplifies grace at the same time. And she's not shy in terms of trusting the people around her, given that she doesn't know a lot about basketball, but making sure that she surrounds herself with people that are stronger in different areas than she is.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. My name is Melodie. I'm the Chief Growth Officer at Mars, pet in our Europe business. So don't be confused by my accent. I live in London and lead the European team for Mars. I also asked my team, since apparently crowdsourcing is the way to go. Unlike these other lovely ladies, though, my team didn't think very long, and then they were like, Catwoman. We also do pet food, by the way. And I was like, I get it. Isn't she a villain? And they were like, So that, or what my personal
Should I be
choice-
scared?
I know. Well, my personal, well, they try to be like, well, you're like a superhero. And I was like, but she's not very nice. Hidden Figures. So I'm going to go Hidden Figures because I was so inspired by those women and breaking through in an industry dominated by white men, like what that must have been like what fighters. So that's my answer.
Very good.
I love that. Hi, everybody. I'm Andrea Zaretsky. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Morgan Stanley Wealth Management, which includes brands like E-Trade. I did not ask my team, but I just thought of a woman I've really been thinking about lately, and it's who watches Hacks? Oh, yeah. I just love Jean Smart. I find her fascinating. She was a glass breaker. She, a female comedian in a world dominated by male comedians, and she's fighting to stay relevant and to have a second act. And I just love watching her journey. She's not perfect. She makes lots of mistakes, but I find her incredibly relatable, and I'm mesmerized.
These are all incredible answers and all great shows. If you're getting on a flight to leave here in a couple days, download it, watch it, think of us. And I think it's a really good way to kick off. A lot of the characteristics that you each mentioned are the things that do make great leaders and really kind of get you to a place where you can lead a company and a brand. And when you think about really honing in on executive presence and building your own brand alongside, right? You're all leading brands that we all know and use every day, but then your own personal brand is part of what allows you to be a C-suite leader. So executive presence isn't just about how you show up, it's also how you hold space. How do you lead from within when you're in a high stakes room? And what have you learned about leading a room through presence and personal brand? So feel free to talk a little bit about how you've cultivated your personal brand and how that helps you kind of command an executive room. Who wants to kick it off?
I could start.
I love that. Thank you.
Listen, I think building your own brand is a tough thing to do at first, right? I think many of us, I certainly do, suffer from imposter syndrome. Do I deserve to be here? But I do think it starts with truly being your authentic self and having confidence. And it's not an easy thing to do, and you question it all the time, but I think if you can be your authentic self, whatever that means to you, whatever you bring to that table, it shows up in a room and people react to it and build off of it. So to me, that's what I've always leaned into. I think, and I said it earlier, my superpower is, I think, empathy. And I try to lead that way. And I try, even when I'm in a room where I'm not with my team, but with people that I have to show up for, I try to think about how other people think about it, how they feel about the situation, and feed into that to actually make what I do work.
I can build off. I love what Dani said. I totally agree. I got some great advice when I was very junior, coming in a very intimidated setting. I was early 20s, working at the New York Times with like the most prestigious story editors. And I was invited to the weekly story editor meeting, and I thought my job was to take notes. And so week after week, I silently sat there, good behavior, taking notes. I thought that was what I was supposed to do. And one of the guys, I was also a young woman, the only woman in the room, a very large table filled with very accomplished men. And he said to me, "Why don't you ever talk?" And I said, "Well, I thought my job was to take notes." He goes, "No, we invited you to this meeting because you're a young woman and we need to understand your perspective because we want to serve that audience. We want to have the next generation of readers. That's why you're here. So you need to talk. That's your job." So that gave me early confidence to know, yes, I'm different, but that diverse perspective will have a commercial outcome if you really lean into it.
And yeah, do you want to jump in? I was just going to comment and say, feeling like you have the permission and that your voice matters, that's really important. And that's something that we can all do for that next generation.
I think it's just one point to add. in order for you to be your authentic self, I think you need to find the right culture. You need to find the right company with the right culture that allows that, and then foster that culture for yourself and for your team, because that's how you then also obviously empower like the next generation. To your second part, influencing from within, I think, at least from my perspective, I always challenge myself, and I do not spend enough time to really influence my fellow peers and my fellow peers in the C-suite, right? Because that's really about like lobbying and helping, especially the topics that we discuss here, like digital disruption, AI. It's so much about the educational part that we need to do. And sometimes we just, for me personally, I just forget to spend that amount of time that it really requires to then like really fully influence from within.
I'm going to come at this from a totally different angle. So here we go. I started my career as an officer in the United States Air Force.
Woo!
Thank you. Before I came to marketing. Thank you. I don't hear that much in Europe, so thank you, American friends in the crowd. And in that male-dominated environment, that is a really tough place to be. And you learn really quickly that if you want to be effective, if you want respect, if you want to lead your team, you need to stand up and take it. And so that's what I learned at 22 years old, leading a team of 10 people who were all 10 years older than me in some really tough environments. And when I came to corporate land, not only was that a tough transition for me personally, but professionally, because I was used to being tough. I was used to being really tough. And in the military, despite what you may see in Hollywood, which is fabulous movies, but not always reflecting reality, it doesn't matter where the idea comes from. You have a responsibility to bring the best idea. So I was like, I have great ideas. And I got quickly like, but you're the most junior person on this team. Nobody wants your ideas. So from the other side, I had to kind of find my way back into more of a collaborative type approach and understand, we call it now bringing people along, but how to influence your peers, how to get other people onto your side, maybe before you started speaking up in a meeting, how to pre-socialize your ideas and kind of gain a consensus. Mars is a very relationship-based culture. Everything we do is through relationships and knowing people and influencing. And so that has been really interesting. Now, they would still say my brand is like tough. But then once people know me, they're like, tough because you love us, not tough because you're just tough.
I don't know how I follow that one. I'm not going to follow you again, but that's quite an impressive story. I'm going to go back to authentic self. I think, when you have an executive presence, all of us worked really hard to get to where we are. But the important thing is, I think, in the boardroom is really understanding why you're there. We all have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and my dad always told me to use it that way in terms of diversity of thought and listening to everyone else. But really realizing that when you're in that room, you're there for a reason. So really figure out what your strengths are. For me, it's about being curious and being creative and making sure that I'm backed up with data. But as long as you're very clear in terms of what your strengths are and what to you bring that table, you will gain the respect of others in that room.
Okay, I love it. I hope everyone's taking notes. These are all just like very salient points. Listen more than you speak, collaboration, influence by, getting everyone on your side. When you end up in the room, you should kind of already know how the meeting's going to go, right? You don't want to show up without having sort of collaborated with your peers or others in advance. Now, so you've cultivated your personal brand, you're on this journey. I have this theory called the blazer theory. And it's just about, how you present yourself does impact how you're going to be treated when you show up to a meeting. So, for example, if I showed up wearing a sundress in, a boardroom in New York City, It might have a little bit, people might perceive you a little differently than if you showed up in a blazer. And it's not about women or men. It's really just more, again, digging into that executive presence, knowing how to present yourself in the room, in the moment. So would love if you could speak a little bit about if you've ever experienced that or any tips or tricks. And if that doesn't resonate as much, also tied to that is, we're in Europe. These are global brands. What happens when you leave New York and you're in a boardroom in Canada or you're in Mexico or London? You know, sort of, is there anything you've learned along the way about how respecting or understanding the culture that you're going to be, you know, entering, that global versus local, how you've had to hone that's also really interesting. So, you know, take it whichever way you want to go.
Sure. I'm happy to start. I think, look, most of us are marketing and sales, so know your audience. So if, you know, it's a corporate culture, you don't want to have that something that's distracting from the message that you want to convey. You should always be yourself and, of course, you know, your personal style, but you don't want to be a distraction. So try to figure out the culture. When you're meeting with clients, how do they dress? How should you walk into their office? I happen to work for an extremely conservative company.
Right.
So I was at E-Trade, and Morgan Stanley bought E-Trade. We were a jeans company. And Morgan Stanley's a suit company. So I had to kind of figure that out fast when I'm meeting with Morgan Stanley leadership. How do I show respect? So I think, you know, it's just knowing your audience, doing the prep globally. When I travel, I call ahead. What is the style? How do people dress in that office? If I'm meeting with either employees or clients, what's the custom? Because I think you always want to leave respect, and then your message will break through.
I totally agree. I think there's a notion of having respect for your role, your company, your job, right? So I think you dress the way you want that respect to show up, right? I agree with you. It's about knowing your culture, knowing their culture, knowing the room you're walking into, who you're talking to. And yeah, there are plenty of times, I work at an ad agency, there's a lot of people who come in jeans and sneakers and ripped, and I think that's fine. And good for them for not having the same baggage that we all have that was like, you have to be dressed. But I do think when you walk into a room, and maybe this is old school thinking, but if you walk into a room and you're representing the C-suite, or you're walking into a room with clients, there is a certain amount of respect that you owe them and the place you work and yourself to show up a certain way.
For me, I think there's two things. You want to dress to represent yourself, your authentic self, but also dress to represent your organization, so that you're proud to work for that organization, and people that look at you, you're representing your company. But secondly, I always like to talk in advertising terms because that's what I do. But if you look at Gatorade, they always talk about what's in you. And there was a campaign, 10 years ago for the Olympics, when they talked about it's not what's on you, it's what's in you. So beyond what you wear, it's also the confidence that you bring in terms of how you wear your clothes and the confidence that you have when you come into the room. So I think it's not just about what you wear, but how you wear it.
I love that.
I love that too.
For me, it's also like a little bit of a, even so we talk about authentic self, it's also like I have horrible imposter syndrome. So for me, it helps me get into character. Mm-hmm. I started very early. I was like at 27, I was in my first boardroom and had my first boardroom meeting. And actually the boardroom was 50-50 women, men. But it just helped me like have that presence and feel good about myself. So I just kept with it. So that's like kind of how I show up. And then I'm in my role and I do my job. And then I go home and I change into sweatpants.
I wore the same thing every day for 7 years. I'm not the fashion person to talk to.
Can I also add just one thing? I do think, unfortunately, you're right. We do live in a world where it is judge a book by its cover, which stinks. So there is this element of people are going to look at you, unfortunately, based on what you're wearing, whether you've got open-toe shoes, whether your stuff is pressed, and we're still in corporate America. We still have to show up that way.
Right, and
because somebody, you could be amazing, and the words that come out of your mouth could be game-changing. But if they can't get that idea out of their head...
Andrea nailed it. It's distracting. So it's like anything you can do to say, let me tailor my personal brand and the way I show up to the people in the room. It's about reading the room. It's about sort of commanding the room by being really noticing, right? Like empathetic, and not being a distraction, not letting your personal brand be a distraction from the brand you're representing, from the pitch you're giving, right? So I think there's a lot to take away from that. So thanks. This is great feedback. And I feel like in some of your answers, you've already touched on all the questions I have, but we'll keep going. I think we already talked a little bit about how people in roles like yours are really expected to be bar raisers. Like, you're raising the bar for your entire team. And it's a really like kind of tough and scary time out there for different people for different reasons. How are you, give me any examples you have of how you're keeping your teams motivated in this very challenging time, and how you're really like fostering and cultivating growth for your teams, and like, keeping them focused when there's all this noise, and really allowing them to raise the bar and be the best versions of themselves.
I guess I can start on this one. So I absolutely agree. It is our job as leaders, not just of our function, but of people, to create environments where people can be their best selves, can be their authentic selves, and feel like they're learning and growing. And I think there's lots of ways we can do that, and I think that looks different for everyone, right? I'll give some examples. There's a lot of great stuff in our industry, right? If you just talk to people and take advantage of whatever the meta guys are doing in your local area, or, they like to talk about Ray-Bans, Google, whatever they're doing. Like, there's AI, there's courses, there's things that we can take people to. And I think a lot of times people don't realize how much access we just have to things in the industry. And then on a personal level, right? I mean, we do a lot of professional coaching at Mars. So if someone on my team is really struggling with an issue, we're happy to go out and get personal coaches. It isn't really that expensive. I think people get afraid of that. But the benefit it pays back to your team is just huge, right? And they feel supported. They're able to overcome some of these issues and to go on to be super successful. And nothing gives me more joy than seeing people on my team go on to have these amazing next roles and careers, whether inside of Mars or outside. I actually have examples of both.
I think many of us are working on very long change management projects, and those are tough and grueling. I think all week we've heard examples of everyone's trying to experiment with AI. So I think on these very long efforts, it's important to have like some quick wins and do some recognition. So we started doing some monthly recognition. I have team all levels. And so we find ways to recognize people on a monthly basis, stand up, and everyone sees it. We recognize in various categories. And one thing we're trying to do culturally is show it's okay to fail, because we want people to take more risks and we want to do more experimentation. We all have to with AI. So for one of the 4 awards, it's called the Lemonade Award. So how do we make lemons, turn them into lemonade, and we celebrate a fail, and they get an award too. And it just helps the culture be comfortable with not everything works out, but what's the lesson and the learning. And we've gotten some good feedback there. I think it's important to take pause on these very long projects.
I worked for somebody once who really truly believed that feedback was a gift, both internally and externally, to give to people who worked for you, but to give the people you worked for, to give to your peers. I do find it empowering. I think if you don't get feedback, you're always A, wondering, or B, can't fix, adjust, or grow. So I think I agree with what you said. I think adding to that feedback every day, good and bad, not bad is the wrong word, but good and constructive, thank you, yeah, is the best way to go. I also believe in letting people rise. Like, somebody gave me an opportunity, somebody gave a lot of us opportunities. I want to pay that forward, because I also believe that you look good when your whole team looks good. And you handpick a team oftentimes, and you saw something in them to know that they were going to grow and do great at their jobs. And I think you got to give them a chance to do that.
Sorry, you want to go? Sorry, go ahead.
So for me, it's a couple of things. I think at the end of the day, being a leader and elevating the bar for our teams is making sure that you give them opportunities even when they're not ready. I've always been taught that our job in succession planning is to ensure that, you know, I don't like saying hit by a bus, but if I win the lottery...
I know, it's hard to think of something else.
Right. But if I win the lottery,
I like that.
I need to protect the company and ensure that there is someone ready to take on my role, and whoever takes that role, we've got a succession plan all the way through. But the only way you can do that is to ensure that you're giving your team opportunities that play to their strengths, but also play to their opportunities, right? What are the critical experiences that person needs to get to where they want to go in terms of their development plan? And secondly, ensuring that you don't take away their confidence while you're doing that. So ensure you give them the right opportunities and give them enough coaching and enough rope, but not too much rope that they're going to hang themselves, or it's going to be something that's detrimental to the organization. But as leaders, that's our job. And I hate going into succession planning when I'm constantly talking about, well, who's going to take my job when I leave, or who's going to take it. But at the end of the day, that's, for corporations, that's our role.
I add a little bit of caveat. I think because you said like these are challenging times, right? There are also so much opportunity. So it's not just on us, it's also on the talent to say like, hey, what can I do and how can I be helpful? If I have someone today on my team who can say, hey, I have the perfect solution, AI driven, how we can like increase and enhance the customer journey and make it better and more customized, I will always take that person into account for the next round of like promotions, of course. So I think it's twofold, right? We provide the environment and the setting, but then the talent also has to step up, because that's what we at some point also all had to do.
Yes, exactly. And I love those. Those were things I actually wanted to ask about was, you know, the executive coaching, the sort of what are the trainings that you can take? What is the feedback that you got? Those are the things that really build us. And I think back to training I've gotten or feedback I've gotten that have really allowed me to grow, right? Or those stretch projects you got to work on that we want to make sure we give our teams. And you said the AI buzzword. So we've said it a couple times already. You know, the can of worms is open. So speaking of AI, beyond just the leadership skills that we're teaching, the industries, it's happening so fast. And I'm so excited. We have a couple different tools that we have that I'm sort of playing around with and figuring out, well, how do we implement this? How do we use it to help? I think also we've all probably heard do more with less or increase efficiency. And there are tools now that we can use to do that. So is there anything that you've been testing, thinking about that you're excited kind of to continue to develop? Or anything that you've done to upskill your teams in these areas of digital innovation, transformation, and growth that you think, you know, are relevant or helpful to share?
I'm happy to kick it off. At Morgan Stanley, we had an early relationship with OpenAI. And so maybe 3 years ago, did a deal and had got access to develop products and tools. Mostly we started with tools that would help with efficiency and productivity, our service centers, taking notes in meetings, being able to go quickly through our thousands of thought leadership documents to pull out just the right one for a client. But now we've just built our first marketing GPT, which I'm super excited about, which we launched last month. And what it allows us to do is to take, let's say, a 50 to 100 page research document, thought leadership on the economy, Morgan Stanley, you know, world class in this area. We can choose the audience that we want to tailor it to. Is it for an institutional audience? Is it a beginning investor? Is it a financial advisor? And then what's the desired output? Is it a social post, an email, a web post? And within seconds, we can create that. This is something that used to take the team months. So we're super excited about that, but change management is tough. And I think there are people who are naturally curious and are gravitating to leverage these new tools and capabilities and love it. We have 2 people who've been leading it on the team, and they, for the last year, have been leading the charge. But now that we're trying to roll it out and scale it, We're kind of, I think this is like where it's becoming a little bit more interesting. So I think what we try to do is find, how can we make sure people are comfortable? Do they understand what the use cases are? So we're trying to meet every single week and have examples of use cases just to give people the imagination of what you can do with these tools. And we're trying to go beyond those two people who've been really the evangelists to have many more new people in the team become those evangelists so people see that they can do it too. And lastly, we're doing office hours every single week because I think people, need a little hands-on keys and needs a little bit more training to figure out how to unlock the power of this incredibly, new thing. So it's an exciting time, but also a lot of change management.
Because we're talking about women at the forefront, I read this horrifying statistic the other day, and it really resonated with me. And I'm going to get the exact percentage wrong, but it's in the vicinity of women are adopting AI 75 to 80% less than men. And they've done some focus groups, if you will, research into why that is. And it's because women feel guilty for taking shortcuts. And I thought, oh my God, I'm that person. Now, the second life lesson that I'm about to drop is always bring people into your life that fill in your gaps, that bring things to you that you don't have. And I am so fortunate that my husband is that person. He's very tech advanced, and he'd been harassing me about AI forever because he was like, you're so slow, you're so behind, you're so ridiculous. And then I found out why, because I did feel a bit guilty, taking a shortcut, that I was somehow cheating on this exam. So now I'm all in it all the time, and am pushing my team, especially my female team members, to do the same. So I talk to your friends, because I guarantee, as I started talking to my team, and my team is half and half men and women, and it was the men were oh, I use it for everything, man. I can't move without it. And all the women on my team were yeah, no, I don't even have that app on my phone. So push your team. There's certainly a gender bias in technology. And just get people, as Andrea said, used to using it, comfortable with using it, share with each other how you're using it, what you're doing it for. Hot tip, vacation planning, A+. But I'm sure in the world of marketing, a lot more smart people than me are going to come up with a lot of amazing ways to use it, and I can't wait to hear about it from them.
Melodie, what you just said is so true, because I have to write 20 reviews every year. And I don't know about you guys, but I put them off for as long as possible because I know I have to write 20 reviews. And I have always, we can use AI, and I have always felt guilty about doing it. And now we're really HR, rightfully so, reviews are so important. And rightfully they're so. They're if you don't write these, they're not getting merit, they're not getting bonus, you have to do it. So I was uh-oh. And I actually leaned in, and I used AI to help write reviews. And what I liked about it was when you answer the prompts and you put in, this is what the person is, this is what they do, this is what they can work, this is what they're great at, blah, 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 everything you put in a review, it spit out something that I would have written myself and took half the time. So I felt really guilty about it for a really long time. But as I really read them, and of course you edit a little bit, you're not just going to hand them something somebody else wrote. But it really was right on. And I fully recommend it, and get over the guilt, because you're right.
So we're a little bit behind, I think, from an AI perspective. We're using it in our manufacturing plants and really advancing. And what's amazing is our VP of technology is female. So she's actually our VP of AI as well. So I'm excited because I'm going to tell her that stat when I get back. We're starting to use it with writing briefs. And really, to your point, it actually speeds things up. Some of my team, that you leave briefs, you don't like writing briefs, writing innovation concepts, but we've started to train the team and really leveraging it. It's pretty crazy when you put innovation ideas and put a brief of something that you're going to want, and AI spits out 50 different ideas, and those ideas are actually stronger than the ones that we had started to write. So it was interesting also listening to Apple on Monday, Marketer of the Year, and how we really talked about the fact of thinking about AI is just helping you get to 100%. Think about it as not just a tool, but a collaborator to actually make your ideas and creativity better.
I have to give you a little bit more general answer because I also feel with AI, it's so...
Well,
we are marketeers. No, we are marketeers. And we are so used to change because our job and the tools that we can use change every year. And we just adjust and adapt. And the trickiest part is, to your point earlier, the change management. But so I think we are like on that forefront, like the CMO is that one role that constantly changes compared to, like, for example, a CFO. So I feel like we're all used to that in a way.
Yes, I completely agree. And I want to share two things. Like, one thing I wanted to share is it's not just about AI, right? It's also about automation, machine learning in general, and just digital transformation. So I think, digital transformation has been like this wave that's been coming. And, I work in programmatic specifically as a subset of advertising and marketing, and have kind of seen that happening just with programmatic advertising, because it's been that evolution of how do we continue to automate and streamline what we do. And we've done a lot of that at DIRECTV. We just went through a digital transformation. And then on a personal note, so yeah, there's the tools that I use at work. And then on a personal note, I just got a puppy, and we have, I can't help it. I can't not talk about it. I'm like, I needed a puppy training schedule. And I'm like, hey, tell me when to feed the puppy, how much, like, what time do I take them out? Like, how do I make this work? And it's just it's great to see the tools. But like you said, I think it's like, we're going to test these tools, then we're going to figure out processes that we can implement with our teams. And that's going to be the part where, okay, then it's trainable, teachable. Right now, it's sort of just test and learn. Let's make some lemonade. And we're going to make a lot of lemonade. With AI over the next couple of years. But that's, we didn't get into what I wouldn't know about you if I didn't read it on LinkedIn. So I think Sarah asked for a cliffhanger. You're going to have to take that as your cliffhanger. Find these women, at happy hour or something, and find out from them what is their superpower and what makes them so successful that you would not know by just reading their LinkedIn profile. So I'll leave you with that. And I thank you again for a wonderful panel. Enjoy the rest of Cannes. And thanks again for all of you for joining.
Thank you.